20 years of hard work and perseverance, and we're here, with a £5.5 million rocket on the launch pad. With 8.4 million pounds of thrust at liftoff, the SLS is a behemoth. This even tops the legendary Saturn V rocket. Going to the moon will be 4 people in the Orion capsule. They'll also have a service module attached to it for supplies and computers. After that, we have the launch abort system, so if something goes wrong while the rocket launches, it can take the crew to safety in a matter of seconds. While critics are quick to point out that the SLS looks like a glorified space shuttle, it's actually very different. First, upgrades to the solid rocket boosters include 25% more propellant, a new nozzle design, and new asbestos-free inseal, and new avionics. The other part of SLS that looks similar is the core stage. However, the only similarity is the paint. The Artemis core stage measures 212 foot high. The core stage is also structurally different. This is because it has to bear weight from the top, unlike the shuttle's core stage. Amazingly, it can hold about 537,000 gallons of fuel. Put all of these elements together and we have the biggest rocket stage that NASA has ever created. We're on a roll now, so we may as well keep going. On top of the core stage is the ICPS. This gets Artemis One out of Earth's orbit and into the moon's. The ICPS is actually also the upper stage of a different rocket, the Delta IV Heavy. The ICPS uses liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen to fuel its engines. It needs to be modified a slight bit to fit the SLS's diameter. NASA actually buys the ICPS off Boeing. Collectively, the 2 solid rocket boosters, the core stage, and the ICPS are all called SLS, or the Space Launch System for short. Now that we know the basics of the SLS rocket, let's take a look at what happens after liftoff. Once going, you can't turn the engines off. At T+2 minutes, the SRBs detach. Then, 6 minutes later, comes the core stage. Finally, the ICPS does the last push to get the crew in orbit. Then there's a few checks to see if the crew's ready to go in deep space, and they fire their engines for the last time in a couple days. The ICPS is jettisoned and the crew are now floating towards the moon. This is where Gateway comes in. Gateway is a purpose-built space station that orbits the moon. NASA is looking to partner with commercial companies to help build this. Since Artemis doesn't have any landing capabilities, they'll use the SpaceX Starship. After Orion docks with Gateway, the crew will transfer to Starship to land on the surface. They'll stay there doing science for about a week, and then they'll pop right back up to Gateway. The hope is that Gateway will be an outpost for future missions to Mars, and beyond. The crew will once more transfer to Orion, and then they will do 2 burns. One to get out of Gateway's orbit, and then another one to escape the moon's orbit entirely. Now, the crew are on a course back to home. Approaching the Earth at a rapid speed, Orion undocks from the service module, heat shield facing the atmosphere. When entering the atmosphere, Orion can face up to temperatures of 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if all has gone well so far, a series of parachutes will open, slowing the craft down to only 20 miles per hour. And just like that, we have a return mission to the moon. So that is the Artemis One mission, but let's have a look at what's next for Artemis. Artemis One, which is a robotic test flight, has probably already launched for you guys watching. But for me, it's launching in like 2 days. Artemis 1 carries no humans and will just go around the moon and come back. Anyway, on to Artemis 2. Artemis 2 will do essentially the same thing as Artemis 1, but there's 4 astronauts on board. They will be the first humans to see Earth in its entirety for a long time. Yeah, we'll need a bit of an upgraded photo on this one. Artemis 2 is currently scheduled for liftoff in mid-2024. NASA will fly Artemis 2 on a slightly better version of the SLS. Now for the big one, this generation's Apollo 11, Artemis 3. Artemis 3 will utilize everything I've talked about in this video, the Starship and the Gateway and more. And this is where the first people get on the moon. The most important mission they'll be carrying out will be looking for water ice on the moon's surface. NASA hopes if there's water ice there, they can sustain a moon base there. Astronauts should spend about 7 days on the moon's surface. This will be the longest time anybody has spent on the moon's surface, the previous record being Apollo 17, where they stayed on the moon for 74 hours and 59 minutes. Artemis 4 will not land humans on the surface, as it will be a mission for upgrading the Gateway Station. Finally, Artemis 5 is another crew-landed mission on the Moon. From here, the future of the Artemis program is unknown. It's all that's been funded, but there's likely to be more missions as competition heats up between China and the US. We may even find ourselves with a moon base in the next 10, 20, 50 years. Who knows what could come after Artemis 5? Moon bases? Moon colonies? We really don't know. But the future is sure something to get excited about. All of the hard work and creativity at NASA has resulted in this, Artemis One. If you haven't watched the launch yet, then but bye, go. It's gonna be cool, okay?